We'll wait for a few more minutes. Yeah, Zubin has been having some internet issues. Therefore, I will wait for a couple of more minutes. If he cannot join, then I will start and he will do the demo maybe towards the end of this session if he's able to join us, or he will complete his new SMV demo next time in the next class. So let's wait for 2-3 minutes to see if he is able to join. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's start. So can you hear me and can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, today I'll introduce you to CTL star, the temporal logic that we will be using So that's commonly used for model checking, and some of its sub fragments. Yeah, this is the outline. CTL star introduce you to CTL star as a property specification language. You go through an informal introduction to CTL star, then do a formal definition of CTL star, illustrate with some examples, and time permitting, I'll have show you a hierarchy of temporal logics that are relevant for model checking, or at least that have been for which model checking algorithms, efficient model checking algorithms have been developed. Okay. So what's a property? Okay, so I'll recall that we saw this example earlier. So it's the mod 4 counter, and what is on the right side, the left side is the transition system for that, and on the right side is the computation tree generated by the transition system. Okay, and the computation tree is labeled with the predicates a b less than or equal to 3 and a b is equal to 0, because that's the one that we are interested in. So I will illustrate what a property is, and someone dropped off. Okay. Okay. Any case, yeah, through this example before I get to the formal definition. So, what's a property? See, property is something that you model check a transition system against. Formally, that is what it denotes: a set of acceptable behaviors, permissible behaviors. Okay, these behaviors can be either linear traces if that's what you're concerned, or the behaviors can be represented as a set of computation trees. Okay? So that's what it denotes. So depending upon whether you care about linear behaviors or branching behaviors, so the property can be either a set of paths, in which case it's called a linear time property. For example, so you may want every path in your behavior to be constrained in such, to satisfy this particular property. So every path, on every path, a b is equal to 0 should be true forever. Okay, or you can have a branching time property, which usually denotes a set of states, and you constrain, express your constraint on the state. So you want every state in your behavior in this computation tree, for example, to be such that from the next state, okay, S, there exists a path on which AB is equal to 0 forever. Okay, so as you can see, the second way of specifying property describes the branching behavior as well. So, given the computation tree that you see in the picture here, what are some of the paths that satisfy the second property, or that are included in the second property? So this states that what it includes is on every path, eventually it should AB is equal to 0 become true. Maybe I said it wrongly the first time. If I said it forever, that was not, so eventually AB is equal to 0 and pi. So can you identify some paths here? Obviously not every path does, yeah. So, okay. So does every path in this behavior satisfy this property? Are there paths in the branching behavior that violates this property? This property is saying, it's saying that, it's set of traces that, or at least, yeah, give me some paths in which here in this, tree here, where eventually AB is 0.
I think in all paths, AB should eventually be 0, right?
Correct, because it's either, yeah,
It counts to 0 or it resets to 0.
correct. It eventually becomes 0. It either resets to 0, even if there is no reset. Since it's a mod 4 counter, it eventually becomes 0. It doesn't matter whether it is a path starting from the initial state, the root of the tree, or not. Okay? So it can be from any, actually every path starting from any node here in the computation tree satisfies this particular property, which So in other words, a property is specifying a constraint, on the acceptable behavior, but formally it denotes a set of traces, labeled traces, and some parts in your behavior may be included or may not be included. Okay, so that's the concept. Okay, so which are the states? Okay, the second property is expressed as a set of states that are constrained in the way that I've informally described here. This is what we will formalize. Okay, we will the temporal logics will temporal logic formulas will actually characterize that we'll be introducing, and here introducing it in an informal way. So what are some of the states that satisfy this property? Does the initial state, the root of this computation tree, for example, satisfy this? What it says is, from a next state of S, there should exist a path on which AB is equal to 0 forever. Okay? Obviously, the root, no, this root state does not satisfy that, because both its successor states are not 0. But is there a state in which that thing is satisfied? Yes, it is the case, because if you look at the state 0, 1, 1, from that state, although AB is not 0 there, that state is such that indeed there exists a path from the next state onwards where AB is equal to 0 forever, because that has, so if you look at this path here on the right side, the rightmost thing, where the reset is set to 1 forever. The environment, makes the reset 1. On that, AB is equal to 0 forever. Okay, so this state here satisfies that, and so does this one, this one too, because this one also has a successor state from which there is a path. Okay, on which AB is reset, that AB is equal to 0 forever. Are you convinced? Yeah, so these are the kind of property that we want. So you see, this branching property is, that's why we call it branching property, because it really expresses constraints on the branching behavior of the thing, of your computation behavior. Okay, correct. So that is the intention. So those are the kinds of properties that we want to be able to specify, and the temporal logic that we'll be looking at will be defined so that these kinds of properties can be specified, which will will be the target for our model checking algorithms. Okay. So the question is how to specify property. So there are two ways. As I said, these properties are set of traces that are constrained in a certain way. Okay, that satisfies some temporal relationship among the temporal constraints on the labels that appear in the on their nodes. So you could specify using some, by defining, constructing a special kind of automata that can accept infinite traces. Okay, so because our behaviors are infinite, as I have noted several times. Okay, so you need automata. It cannot be a finite state automata, but it has to be an automata that can accept infinite traces. Okay. Or another way is to define a special kind of temporal logics whose satisfying models are exactly the acceptable traces that are defined by the property. Okay, so I mean, so those, in that sense, a formula in the temporal logic will represent the property. Okay, so that's the motivation here. In the beginning of the course, we will see the temporal logic way of specifying these properties and how to model check them. Later, we will look at automata theoretic way of doing it as well. Any questions? Okay. Yeah, and specifically what we're looking at is a logic called CTL star and some subclasses of it, specifically CTL, LTL, and classes called ACTL and ACTL star. So the sub logic, or the fragment of these various logics used, that we have mentioned here, they impact both the expressiveness, that is in the sense that what kind of property, what kind of constraints you can actually specify, and also the complexity of the model checking algorithm. That is precisely why these fragments are defined. For example, CTL is a subset of CTL star, and for which the model checking problem is a lot more, I mean, somewhat more, less complex than the other things. The last two, one LTL model checking is also quite popular. And, so that, primarily deals with linear time properties. ACTL and ACTL star are sub logic of CTL star that satisfy interesting properties that make sometimes model checking more scalable to that subclass. And so that way they are of interest to look at. So what are the syntactic components of CTL star? CTL star is a branching, is able to specify a branching time. And it also, as its component, has path properties as well. So it has what are called path quantifiers. So CTL star has two classes of formulas, one called state formulas and the other called path formulas. The state formulas represent a set of states, okay, and path formulas represent a set of paths. So then it has path quantifiers which construct state formulas. For example, it is A of phi. Okay, A is a universal path quantifier, and where phi is some other sub-formula. So it's actually a path formula. So it is true of a state S if every path from S satisfies the path the path property phi. Okay. Similarly, you have E phi. That is true of a state if there exists a path from S. It is true of a state S if there exists a path from S that satisfies the path property phi, represented by a path formula. I'll define formally the syntax in a few slides from now, but here I'm giving an informal introduction to the syntactic components. Then it contains a set of linear time, what are called linear time temporal operators, okay, that relate states across time. And these operators construct path formulas that define path properties. So informally, for example, assuming, so these are constructed, these operators take as an argument another path formula. So they are just like in any logic, these are recursively built. So this is the next time operator. X is called the next time operator. And P here can be another, path formula representing some path. So this is true if the property P is true starting from, it is true of a trace. Okay, as I said, these are path formulas. Okay, therefore they are, when you ask them if they are true, they are, they are true of some paths. Okay, this is true of a path if P is true on the subpath starting from position, position 1. Okay. F is the eventuality operator. So this is, here I'm using informally. Okay, we'll be defining it formally later on. So F of P is true of a path if P becomes eventually true at some point in the path. Okay, so that is P would be true of the path starting from the path at some index I. Okay, that's how this should be understood. G of P, this is forever operator. It is true if it is true of the path starting from I is equal to 0, I is equal to 1, 2, 3, etc. on these subparts. Okay, this is an until operator. So here, this requires, it is true of a path if eventually Q becomes true at some point, and up to that, up to the point prior to where Q becomes true, P should continuously be true. Okay, so that's, so that's the constraint that it imposes on paths. So those are the paths that satisfy the until operator. The R operator is called the release operator. This is kind of a dual of the until operator. It is read as P releases Q. So it requires Q to be true until such point when P becomes true. Okay, of course, it doesn't require P to be true ever, in which case Q has to be continuously true forever. Okay, so yes, so the Q has to be true until P is true, including the point at which P is true as well. As I've said, the P here, can itself be a path formula. Okay, therefore, when I say that it has to be true at a certain point, what it means is that P has to be true of the trace starting from that point onwards, the prefix or the suffix trace starting from that point onwards. That's how you should be understanding these things. Okay, so that's how these path formulas are constructed. Of course, you will have to have a base case, and the base case is one where the P is an atomic formula on a predicate. How are these things built? So because the formula has to, finitely sized formula, so there must be a base case, and then the P will, in the base case, the sub-formula to which this operator is applied will be an atomic state formula, like a state predicate. Okay, so that is a special case where a state formula, which is just a predicate on a state, is also will be viewed as a path formula. And the way you interpret that is that P is true of a path, okay, an atomic predicate, if it is true in the first state of the path. Okay, so that's how you kickstart the construction of the path formulas. Okay, so now once you have these path formulas to that, you can apply a path quantifier to get a state formula. Okay, which represents a set of states. Okay, so the set of states that are satisfying that. Okay, it's in the base case where a state formula, a state predicate is both a state formula as well as a path formula. Okay, so when it is interpreted as a path formula, then it is understood to mean to be true in the first state. Okay, so that's the informal semantics. So here I will define first the formal semantics and then illustrate it on a few examples, so you will get some idea before introducing the formal semantics as a satisfiability relation, formal syntax. So as I said, so these are the rules, rules of constructing the formulas in that logic. You may recall that when I introduced the Boolean preposition logic as well as the quantified Boolean logic, which is true for any logic, there is a syntactic part which defines how you construct the well-formed formulas in that logic. And then there is a semantics part, which tells you what, when a formula is, the truth assignment to the formula, when a formula is considered to be true or false relative to a model. So now I'm defining the formal syntax. What I did in the last slide was kind of informally give you what path formula, when path formulas and state formulas were true would hold. So if P belongs to AP, this is all relative to a Kripke structure. Remember the Kripke structure. I don't have a slide, but a Kripke structure is a transition system augmented with a map which labels every state with certain propositional predicates. Okay, so that that propositional atomic can be considered as a predicate on state. So for every P that belongs to this set, the label, the set of labels, P itself is a state formula, as I mentioned previously. If two F and G are state formulas, then you can apply the usual Boolean connectives to it to construct another state formula. And these have standard semantics as in propositional logic. If F is a path formula, then as I said before, you could construct a state formula from that by prefixing it with a path quantifier, either an existential path quantifier or a universal path quantifier. So these are rules that construct the path formulas. So if F is a state formula can always be viewed also as a path formula, okay? With the informal interpretation that I gave you. So it is true of all paths in which when that is viewed as a state formula, it should be true of the first state on that trace, on that path. So F and G are path formulas, then so are all of these things. Okay, you can take the negation, disjunction, and conjunction. Okay, and you can apply the linear path operators X, F, X, the eventuality operator F, the forever operator G, the until or the release operator. Okay, so these until and release are binary operators which take two path formulas as arguments. Okay. Since path properties are, we will define the formal semantics later, but informally, when you complement it, because they are sets. When you do a disjunction, this corresponds to includes the set of properties and the set of paths that satisfy F or G, and this is intersection, and this is complementation, and these were defined informally as I showed you in the earlier slide. Now, CTL star formula in CTL star is a set of state formulas, defined as a set of state formulas constructed as per the above rules. Okay, so you will have to what is considered as a well-formed CTL star formula is a state formula which can have embedded path formula, but eventually you will have to either use a path quantifier and make it a state formula to qualify it as a formula in CTL star, or it can be a state formula to begin with. Okay, like in the atomic case. Okay. So let me take a few examples where to make you understand the syntax better and hopefully understand what state and path formulas represent on this example. the running example that we're using.
What's an example of a path formula that is not a state formula?
Can you speak up? What is
What
the
is example of a path formula that is not a state formula?
a path formula that is, yes. For example, this one, x of f. I mean, these are all not, these are exclusively path formulas because x of f is only
Okay, so
defined.
if you apply the LTL things, I mean the LTL operators to a state formula, then it becomes a path formula.
No. So let's take this example. I mean, the examples. Okay, in short, in briefly to answer, any state formula is technically can also be a path formula. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's that the reverse is not true. Okay, so if there is a leading path, a temporal operator, then its meaning is defined in such a way that it is only true of paths. Okay, because it is not that's for example, f of f. That's why you informally gave the semantics. Okay, f of f is true of a path.
Okay.
I mean, the way it is defined, it is true only makes sense only for
Yeah.
paths. So these are exactly the cases where they are, these are path formulas, but not state formulas.
Okay.
Don't get confused.
Yeah.
These
These can
logical,
be both.
yes.
Yeah, I mean those can be both. I mean those are both state formulas and path formulas. I mean they can be. I mean
Yes,
if f is clear.
once you apply A and E,
Yeah.
they can be path formulas as well, okay? With the interpretation that it is true of those paths in which that state formula is true in the first state, okay? But if you don't have a leading quantifier,
Okay.
or it is not an atomic formula like it is here, then it is, I mean, okay, then it cannot be taken as a state formula, okay? So then it represents a set of paths, yeah? Okay, so let's assume that the AP, the atomic predicates here are one that checks if AB is equal to 0 or AB is less than or equal to 3. So here is an atomic predicate. Is this, for each of these things, tell me if it is a state formula or a path formula or both, as per the definition of syntax. Someone?
This is a state formula.
It is certainly a state formula, yes, okay, because it's true. It is. You can say that you can define the states for which it is true and for the states where it's not true. But it's also a path formula, okay, because by definition, syntactic definition is a path formula, and the informal semantics, which I will formalize later on, is it is true of those paths if it is true in its first state. Okay, so it's both a path formula as well as a state formula. Now this one,
Just a path formula.
yeah, it's just a path formula because inherently, and that's the way we'll define the semantics. It's not a state formula, but it's only a path formula. And by the way, even for this, so I want you. So what are the identify some of the paths in the computational tree of the mod 4 counter for which satisfy this, okay, which is included in this paths for which this property is true. Is there any?
No, there are none.
No, but then we can just cycle at 0, 0 with reset equals 1 to get a path.
No, see, I'm saying any paths. So don't read it as, when I asked that question, I was very careful. I'm not saying paths that start only from the root. It can start from any of the states in the computational tree, okay? So interpret my question that way. Obviously, there is a path, those paths which are, okay, there is a path, okay? For example, this particular path starting from this state, okay? If you look at that path, on the right side, that does satisfy this, okay? I mean, yeah, I'm making the point that, see, model checking is, of course, you have to ensure that things work from the initial state, but properties are defined independent. They only represent paths, okay? In this case, this is a path formula, therefore it represents paths. So this is true of those paths in which AB is equal to 0. That label AB is equal to 0 belongs to that state forever. So if you kind of isolate this path starting from this node here, this particular path on the right side, or in which I assume that one reset is asserted constantly, okay, that particular path is certainly AB is equal to 0, okay, is true forever, okay. So I'm trying to, the reason I asked that question was because that's how you should view properties, okay. Properties are, in some sense, independent. They have a meaning as a set of paths which are independent of any particular transition system or model, okay. So that's why I asked this question. Are there paths, arbitrary paths here in this computation tree for which this is true? Yes, that there is this path, and then there is, of course, another path from here, similarly here from 1, 0, 1, there is, a path on which, starting from there, it is continuously true, okay? So there are, paths in this. Of course, as you will see, we will define the model checking problem as one of checking if the property is true of all paths starting from the root, which represents the initial state. But that aside, this question that I asked is a general question, and that's how you interpret when you try to answer for this particular slide. Similarly, f of AB is equal to 0. Are there, okay, firstly, is this a path formula or a state formula? This is
It's
only
a path formula.
Yeah.
And
So,
for every path, it holds true.
correct. You're right. Okay. So every path starting from any state in this computational tree, it holds good because it either reset or certainly recycle. This one. This is a case where I'm nesting path formulas inside another. Okay. Firstly, is it a path formula or a state formula?
It is a path formula.
Correct.
And it holds true for the state to the right of the top state.
No. Be precise and in your statement. Okay, you started by saying it holds true for states. Okay, that doesn't make sense.
Holds from a path starting from the state to the right, which is the right child of top. This thing.
That is one of the paths, correct. Okay, so it does not hold good for the path starting from the root. okay? Certainly not, okay? Because it requires that from next state onwards, A, B is equal to 0 has to be continuously true. So you're right, it holds good for the path. For those paths, for this particular path, okay? It certainly holds good, yeah? Where it is, because starting from here, since one, so on that path where one is set, so it certainly holds good. Not in other paths. There are other paths here for which this is true as well. It is true, yes, it is true of this particular, path starting from here, okay? But it is not true for every path starting from this one either, okay? Because it is certainly not true for example, from here, you can have flips here, okay, if the resets flips, okay? So, but it is true of that particular path. And there can be several other paths in this for which that, that is true. Yeah, this is I'm pushing this example in ways where, which you may not be care about to kind of, illustrate the points. So this one, see, yeah. So here is a case where, so the sub formula starting from EG, oh, there is a parenthesis missing, sorry. So that is a state formula that is used as an argument to a path operator.
So it's not a well-formed formula.
Why do you say that? Because this is a state formula can always be interpreted as a path formula. Okay? Therefore, it is indeed well formed. It has a dual interpretation. Okay, so it is true of those. This sub formula EG is true of those states from which there exists a path in which AB is equal to 0 forever. Okay, which is such a state? For the moment, ignore this X. Okay, ignore this X leading the trailing X here. So EG of AB is equal to 0 represents the set of states, this combinational tree, from which there exists a path in which AB is equal to 0 forever. Okay? And as we said, this is such a state, 0, 0, 1. I'm pointing out here. I hope you can see my cursor. Okay, so this here indeed has a path, and actually it is true for here also. I'm sorry, it is true starting from here. Okay, so here there exists, it is true of this state as well, the one that I'm pointing out. Okay, so I don't know if is the cursor clear? I'm assuming the cursor is clear. Yeah, okay, so it is true there because there exists a path here starting from, whenever I say G has to be continuously true, it has to be true starting from that the first state itself. So it is certainly true of this state. Okay, what this is, and with an X, and so is for example here, this one, where there is one is continuously true. So this one is, if I may dare to say, this is exactly the same as the one before. So what this is saying is, yes, so in this case, this is indeed a well-formed formula. This is a path formula. This is a case where a sub-formula, which is actually a state formula, is interpreted as a path formula and is used as, in applying it to a temporal operator X, okay? So when in that case, this will be interpreted as okay, this is true of this particular state. Okay, I mean, it is true of this, this state. So, and this would be true of path from here. Okay, so all it's saying is in the next, is there a next state? Okay, is there a path from here with the next state for which EG is true as a path formula? Okay.
EG AB is equal to 0 is a state formula, right?
Correct.
Okay.
AB is equal to 0 is a state formula, and
And
that is can be
EG
used
applied
with
to AB is equal to 0 is also a state formula.
which one?
EG applied to AB 0. AB is equal to 0.
Yeah, that is a state formula, but here I can interpret it as a path formula saying that, okay,
Okay.
on the paths
first state.
starting from in that as a state formula holds good. So is that a state? So in the next, on that path, okay, this is true of all those paths in which, not the first, but the second state for which this EG of AB is equal to 0 is true as a state. Okay, and that means as if it is true for that state, and that certainly is true for paths starting from 0, 1, 1 in the next state. Okay, the next state here, so it is true of this path. Okay, so this one in this case is equivalent to the formula that is that I have specified, this earlier formula. Okay, and just use this to show that even a complex state formula can be interpreted as a path formula and be used as an argument to a path operator. So yes. Is that clear? Okay, so I'll move on.
This is a state formula which does not hold.
It's a state formula, yes. Okay.
It doesn't hold.
But firstly, I haven't said anything about path. It could be used as a path formula, just like I'm using here, depending upon the context. But it is meant as it's certainly a state formula. Okay. So I mean, yes. Usually, this kind of usage that I showed you here. Let's not get into. So mostly, it is the atomic formula at which you will need to use the thing. But in any case, but why do you say that is it not true of any state in this? I haven't checked it. Why do you so firmly say that it is not true of any states in this computational tree?
Sorry, it is true, I think.
Yeah. It is true here, no? Yeah, just like we explained. Yeah. Okay, first, how about the, without the E, the sub-formula, which is a disjunction. Tell me if that is a state formula or a path formula. Ignore the E.
It is a path formula.
Correct. So that's a path formula. It's actually a disjunction. So it contains those paths in which either the first disjunct is true or the second disjunct is true, or both of them are true. So in other words, it contains all those paths which is the union of the set of paths satisfying the first disjunct and the second disjunct, because that's a path formula. You have put a existential quantifier there, and therefore this is a state formula. Okay, it's a state formula. Is this true of? Is there a state in the computational tree for which this is true?
Yes, yes.
Which one?
The right root, right child of the root.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, these are all, yeah, kind of, yeah, but it is, yes. So, yeah, because, yes. Is there another state for which this thing
The
is?
right child of the right child of the root. The same one in which we saw in the previous example.
True of this, the state 011, the right child of the root, as well as the thing, and you can, I'm sure, identify other similar more states on this part as well that are similar to this one. Okay, so that's the idea. I hope as you get kind of acquainted, as you start writing these things a little bit more and start thinking about it, this becomes you get more comfortable with with this. But these formulas are fairly cryptic, okay, and you need to sometimes stare at them a few moments before you can understand. It is even, I mean, I think given a formula, what it means is much easier to to do than if you were faced with a property in that an English that is stated in English, which you want to convert formally into a temporal logic formula in one of the sublogics, okay, that I've used. Then it becomes even more challenging, and you need to be even more adept at this thing. But that's what this thing is. That's why some people prefer to use automata, okay, but I don't know. I mean, this is just a style preference, and this is how this temporal logic is. Okay. Any questions here?
So, I have a small question. So, what happens if we try to use a propositional connective for which has, say, a path formula on one side and a state formula on the other side? And syntactically, it's equivalent to saying like there are path formulas on both sides, right?
No, that's actually not allowed by the
I
syntax.
see.
Yeah,
but if every path formula is a state formula, then I mean,
that's a good point. Okay, so yeah, there's a path. No. But every, yeah, so it will be a, yeah. So you could use that. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could view that as yeah, this is something that I have to look at. Yes. So let me look at the syntax. I have to be careful here. Okay. No. Okay. So quickly to answer your question. So let's, then I will confirm. So yes, what you're saying is if it's a disjunction of technically a path formula on one side, which is a true path formula, and the other one is a state formula. And a state formula can always be semantically viewed as a path formula. So I guess that is allowed, I guess.
so if you do something like say AB equal to 0 and or say X AB equals 0, that just basically means all paths which either AB is equal to 0 in this state or the next state.
Yeah, so that whole thing will become the example that you just brought out.
Yeah, that will become
a path formula.
Right, but that is no longer a state formula now. Yeah.
Well, certainly that's no longer a state formula.
Right.
Correct. Yes.
So that is how we are going to interpret that.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's a good point. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So formal semantics of CTL star and what is the model checking? So define in terms of a satisfaction relation that we'll be defining formally, which forms the formal semantics. And that satisfaction is defined with respect to given a Kripke structure M and a state S or a path pi, okay? I mean, you need both, okay, to interpret CTL star, okay? So a path formula, so we denote it like this. A path formula phi satisfaction is denoted like this. So it says that in the Kripke structure M, because see, we're using labels and so on. So given an M, a Kripke structure, and a path pi, okay, because we primarily will be using the two aspects of the Kripke structure there, the labeling as well as the the transition is with respect to M. So that mostly the labeling that is so that's how it is defined. Similarly, satisfaction of a state formula is defined with respect to given a state. Okay, and then the model checking in a particular logic. So this can be this definition can be extended to any logic. So we'll say given a particular Kripke structure that is considered to satisfy psi. So here S or pi is removed. Okay, if for every state belonging to the initial state S naught, okay, in the Kripke structure, M comma S, psi satisfies is satisfiable with respect to M comma S. Okay, so which means it has to be true for every initial state in S. So that's how model checking is defined. Yeah, as we will see, a subfragment, a sublogic of CTL star is something called LTL. It is CTL star without any quantifiers or any path quantifiers. So, so you only have path formulas there, okay? In which case this will be defined with pi, and it will say every path starting from every initial state, okay? But anyway, since we have defined CTL star, well-formed CTL star formula as a state formula, which is either obtained by trivially as an atomic formula or is constructed from a true path formula using by applying a path quantifier. Okay. Now, yeah. So since we still have time, I will go through the thing. Unfortunately, I thought Zubin was going to be here and he was going to do so. I did not think, since I'm using the same definition as in the book, I will go to the book. I didn't finish the slide which had the thing. So with your permission, I will yeah. So I'm following this chapter 4, at least in the order in which it is discussed there. But all I'm doing is I'm augmenting this thing. This chapter is, as a reference, it's good, but it does not give many examples, nor it does, bring lots of subtle points and so on. So these examples are extremely important here. That is one thing that I'm trying to add. And also in the examples, I'm also including some corner cases, which are maybe usually don't occur in practice. So to sharpen our understanding. In any case, so let me go through the formal definition of the syntax, okay, which actually defines the satisfaction relation. Okay, So it inductively, just like the syntax was defined recursively over the structure of the formula construction, similarly, the semantics here is defined inductively over the structure of the formula. Okay. So the first few rules give truth assignment to state formulas, and the state formula truth assignment is defined in terms of path formula semantics. Okay. So if it is an atomic predicate P, then it is true in a particular state if that state is labeled with that with P. And the same thing as saying if you evaluate the predicate in that state, it must be true. Okay? And that's true for any P belonging to the set of labels. And these are semantics of the standard logical semantics of the Boolean operators. So not of some state formula is true if the subformula F1 is false for that model, and or if either of them holds, and both of them must hold, and E of G1, where G1 is a path formula, that's how this thing is constructed, is true of a state S if there is an infinite path pi starting from S such that G1 holds for a path pi in that model. MS, yeah. So AG1 is true in a model in a given state. If for every infinite path pi starting from S, we have M of pi, G1 to be true. So starting from here, it's all giving the semantics of path, set of path formulas. Okay, so this is the case where F1 could be a state, yeah, it is the case where it's a state formula, but interpreted as a path formula. In that case, it has to be true. It's true of pi if it is true of the first state. And M of pi, similarly, not of G1 is true if it is true of those, those paths for which G1 does not hold. Okay. And similarly, or and here. So it is true of those paths when either of them or both are true. And here, exclusively, both of them have to be true. And the interesting cases are here, okay? Starting with the temporal operator. So X of G1 is true of a path pi if G1 is true of a path, which is a suffix of this pi starting from position 1. So we assume that the paths, the nodes, the states in the path are labeled from 0. So if it is true of pi 1. So pi superscript 1 represents the path starting from index 1. So f of G1 is true of a path pi if there exists some position in the path at position in the path and the suffix starting from that position for which G1 should be is true. Okay, so its k is greater than or equal to 0. So f of G1 is considered to be true if it is true in the first state itself, okay, or any other future state. Okay? And the reason that it is defined this way, that it is, you have to apply the satisfaction of G1 to the path starting from pi k, pi superscript k, because G1 can be itself be a path formula. Okay? So that's why it is being defined this way naturally. So G of G1 is true if this is true for all suffixes of the path pi starting from position 0. This is the until operator, G1 until G2 is true. if there exists a K, a position K in the path, inside path I, that's that pi, yeah, G2 should be true for the path starting from K. And if that is, there's a position in K at which, for this G2 becomes true for the path starting from that position, then, and up to that point, not necessarily including that point, the first argument, the first formula has to be true. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the first formula has to be true for that, for that entire path. Okay, path, suffix path starting from 0, 1, 2, etc., all the way to k minus 1. Okay. So carefully read this. Okay, this is, don't just assume that G1, G2 are just atomic predicates. Okay, and that they only need to be true at that state. Okay. Remember that they can be path formulas, and that's why the satisfaction relation is defined for the subformula over the path, the suffix path starting from that index. Okay, so yes, that's how you should understand and interpret. So the dual is just says the reverse, that yes, G1, yeah, this here should be interpreted as G2 releases G1. I always get confused here. By the way, not all of these temporal operators are necessary, okay? So you will see some of them can be derived from the other. There are, just like in propositional logic, there are various subsets of logical connectives which are universal. So here too, there are not all, some of them can be derived from the other. So this is the dual which says G1 should be, no, G2 should be, G1 releases G2. So that's how you should interpret it. G1 releases G2. So G2 has to continuously hold good up to the point and including the point where G1 becomes true, if ever G1 is true at all. Okay, it does not require that G1 has to be true ever, in which case G2 has to be true forever. Okay, so that's what it is, and you will see that we will use this as a dual operator to you, and if you, although R can be derived from the rest of the things, it is quite convenient to have R as a dual operator, so that your properties and R can be expressed in terms of U using negation. Okay, it's not a direct negation, but rather it is a bit complicated negation, which we will see later on. That way, you can write more compact specifications if you assume that you have both the operators, and that's why they are used. So finally, the model checking is a satisfaction problem for a particular model. Crypt key model is defined as follows: M, F1, a formula, CTL star formula satisfies M, or it model checks successfully if for all initial states S0 F1 holds. Okay, it's not. Okay, so I think I'll stop here unless you have some questions. So next time I'll see more. We will see the hierarchy. First, we will see more examples, more realistic examples. So I will, to make sure that any of your, all your doubts are clarified. I will define the hierarchy, and also talk a little bit more about fairness constraints to see how fairness constraints can actually be described, and also use some typical formulas that are used, how to express certain typical properties that are useful for concurrent in the context of concurrent systems next time. Okay, and hopefully Zubin would have cleared up his problem, fixed his problem, so he can complete the demo for your benefit. Any questions? Okay.
So I just like a very general question. So you said earlier that we can also probably use automata to define the like the properties that we want to model check for, right?
Correct.
So aren't we in a certain sense trying to like check properties of automata over here? So I mean, would that not like defining that automata? How would that even like?
Yeah. You're right. Okay. So firstly, the automata that we use is something called Buki automata. You must have
Right.
heard. Huh?
Yeah.
So they are the standard automata that you define. There may be other automatas. Okay. Yeah, but you're right. See, the distinction is that the Buki automaton over these labels can be used to specify property. Now, it so happens our transition systems, can also be, because they are infinite paths, they can also be represented as, Buki automaton. Okay. Okay. Buki automaton. Therefore, it so happens that that particular thing there, yeah, I guess that was what your question. So yes, in the automata theoretic framework, both the property and the transition system use somewhat similar formalism. Okay, the same similar formalism are used. I carefully use the term similar because in the case of transition system, there is small technical differences when you're dealing with properties. Okay, so yes, you will see that the automata theoretic model checking, in which the model checking satisfaction problem is uh, uh, defined as language inclusion problem or
Right. So I see.
documentation problem involves both the transition system represented as automata and the property represented as these special kinds of automata.
Right. So we have some complicated automata representing our transition system, and we define our properties in some simpler automata that we know correctly represents our property, and then we phrase the problem as language inclusion.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. I see.
Yeah. But I'm not sure if, I think these Buki automaton cannot represent all the formulas in the logics. For example, CTL star, or if let alone, even CTL. Okay, the Buki automaton corresponds to only LTL, which is a strict subset of CTL star. Maybe there are other kinds of automata like tree automata, etc., extensions of the tree concept to tree Buki automata. I don't know. Okay, I haven't studied much, other than Buki automata, but there might be some extensions. But the standard Buki automata only applies to LTL fragment of CTL star.
I see.
Yeah. So yes. Any other questions? See, ultimately, one comment that I want to make, since you brought up this automata theoretic approach. See, automata way of looking at automata is a nice framework. Sometimes it becomes quite nice to understand, fall back on certain concepts that you're so familiar with, in the context of finite state automata, and these are all extensions of that. And you can rely on properties about finite state automata and extensions thereof. Okay, but you see, eventually those methods, even though they are represented as automata, they have to be using symbolic representations, because otherwise they don't scale up. Okay? So that's why I don't see any the most model checking tools use only symbolic model checking. Okay? But some of them may use automata to specify as the property specification. There is some real advantage in using automata to specify a property language, especially if you're familiar with that. There is a certain level of confidence that you get. Okay? So that's why it's important to understand the Buki automaton at least as a specification language. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. I'll see you Friday. No, next week. Yeah. Bye.